very interesting careers and worked a number of places and so on, and I'll let them tell you about that. But I'll just mention first of all that Chris and Chai were in our very first class of cognitive science majors who ever graduated from Lehigh. So when we say 30th anniversary of cognitive science at Lehigh, they were there at the beginning. And Wendy was in the very second class that graduated, actually the year after Chai and Chris. And Joelle represents the recent generation, okay, 2013. So before we start, maybe just while everybody has another minute or two to eat, maybe I just ask everybody else to go around and say their name and just, you know, what's your major, prospective major, just, I mean, not long, but just I'm Cog Sci major, or I'm thinking about Cog Sci, or I'm in computer science. And we do have some faculty here too, so we'll have everybody. So, Kiri, let's start with you.
From me?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kiri Lee. I'm a linguist. My home department is the modern languages and literature. And this is really like my home to me because I'm the only linguist in my department, and everybody else is literature scholars. So I feel kind of honored to be part of this program. Thank you.
So I missed Hector because you
were
walking.
Okay, I thought I was going to be last.
So try it.
So, my name is Hector Muñoz-Ávila. I'm a professor of computer science. I do research in an area called cognitive systems, so I very much consider this program to be also my home. And pretty soon I will be able to say professor of computer science and cognitive science, and hopefully we'll be able to work on that. So and I'm very grateful that you came here today.
Joelle?
I'm Joelle. I feel like I ended up on the wrong side. Yeah, I'm an undergrad, second year, majoring in behavioral neuroscience, and I just came here to learn more about the cognitive science major and stuff.
Hi, I'm Amanda Brandoni. I'm an associate professor in the psychology department, and I'm a developmental psychologist, so I study infants and young children and cognitive development.
Hi, I'm Jessica Marsh. I'm associate professor in the psychology department. I'm a cognitive psychologist, and I study categorization and causal reasoning.
I'm Nancy Carla. I'm assistant professor in the psychology department. I study cognitive neuroscience with a focus on attention and working memory.
I'm Eddie Jeffs. I'm a freshman, and I'm planning to dual degree in cognitive science and computer engineering.
I'm Jeff Heflin, associate professor of computer science. I'm on the supervisory committee for cognitive science right now. And my research interests are in AI with applications to the web.
I'm eating spinach. I'm Pat O'Shea. I'm in psychology and cognitive science, even though we're not allowed to say that anymore. And I study language production, mostly, language sciences. And what else? Wendy was one of the first people in one of my first classes at Lehigh, so I've been here for quite a while.
Hi, I'm Ben Landis. I work in our alumni relations office, and I'm a development officer with the College of Arts and Sciences.
I'm Jessie Chin. I'm a senior studying computer science and cognitive science.
I'm Kathy. I'm a junior studying cognitive science and on the pre-med track.
I'm Amanda. I'm also a junior and I'm studying computer science.
I'm Isel. I'm majoring in biology and I'm minoring in cognitive science.
I'm Madison. I'm a junior majoring in cognitive science and journalism with a data science major.
I'm Ben and I'm majoring in cognitive science.
I'm Taylor. I'm a first year and I'm studying the IDEAS program with a concentration in cognitive science.
I'm Andrea. I'm a first year. Undecided, but I'm definitely thinking about it.
I'm Morgan. I'm a first year. I'm in business school, but I'd definitely be interested in minoring.
And I'm Barbara Malt. I'm a faculty member in psychology, and I'm also director of the cognitive science program. So, do you all feel ready to start speaking? Have you had enough time to eat something? Okay, so Wendy was
first, if you don't mind.
Wendy was agreeable to go first, and so our panelists are going to talk a little bit about sort of what they did after Lehigh, how their career path evolved, how cognitive science has figured into what they've done, or anything else that they want to share with you. And then after they've all talked a bit, we'll have open question and answer, so you can ask them anything that's on your mind about how they got to where they are, or what you should do with your lives, or whatever you want to know. So Wendy.
All right. So I brought notes, which I totally don't need because, it's my life story and I know it. All right, so I think I traveled the least to be here. I live about 2 miles that way. I'm really happy to be here. I'm not sure I'm a good case study in cognitive science because I was always going to be a software engineer. That was always my plan. I did have a problem declaring majors. By my junior year, I had declared 5, and I hadn't undeclared any. And I think that this is unusual. The dean of students, Sheila Hyde, was her name at the time, called me up in my dorm room, and she's like, "You need to declare a major. Pick one." And I started counting up credits. A lot of them were computer science or psychology, and I'm like, "Hey, cognitive science works. It fits." That's how that happened. I was already kind of on track for it. It actually let me graduate in 3.5 years, which was because I started late, not because I ended early. But that was how I became a cognitive science major. While I was at Lehigh, I worked summer jobs writing software. Like I said, that was always going to be the plan. It was for an oil company in New York, which was, although perhaps not emotionally fulfilling, was very interesting. I worked at the computing center. I don't remember what they were called. We called ourselves consultants with a K for some reason, like at the help desk. Pretty much my entire tenure here. Between the junior year and senior, the summer between junior year and senior year, I was in summer school trying to make up for a little bit of lost time. And I put signs all around campus that I was that I would do odd jobs. You have, you need software written, you need a computer installed, you have files you needed converting, whatever. I was just hustling, I was just whatever. So I put them around campus, I put them, in Maine, Bethlehem. I got a phone call from a company just across the bridge, and the phone call was basically like, "Hey, I found your name on the men's room wall." Which was true. I did have somebody put one in the men's locker room in a gym on the north side. So it wasn't totally a lie. I saw your name on the men's room wall. And they called me in for an interview, and they offered me a job, and I worked there. It was writing software. And I worked there for the rest of the summer, and then 10 hours a week during the school year. My senior year, I was applying for jobs, and I was offered, in November of my senior year, I was offered a job from Merck Pharmaceutical. So I was pretty much set. And then I got laid off before I started in April. So the company that I had been working for was like, "Hey, come work for us for a while." I'm like, "All right." So I did that, until I found something else. And I stayed there 26 years. It turned out, actually, I liked Bethlehem, and I liked the company, and things were good. The company itself is an education technology company. They were focused mainly on the main academic software, or the main administrative software you would see in a school. So it handled, registration and making sure your transcripts get out, and attendance and things like that. K-12, not university. So I stayed there for a while. My main specialty was in integration of software. So a school will have 50 or 100 pieces of software. A place like Lehigh is going to have 100 pieces of software with your records in it. Anything that you sign into, anything that sends you a piece of paper, anything you swipe an ID card, it has your records on it. And my specialty is in making sure that all those systems are in sync. Because the alternative is somebody has to do data entry on 100 different systems. And those are by design. Whoever writes, the cafeteria software does not care about anybody else. So they're just not designed to work together. So my job, my specialty in this really became about understanding a lot of different systems and how they interact with each other and reverse engineering them. So I got pretty good at that. I had a team working for me sort of in our downtime. We wrote mobile apps, we wrote web applications, we did lots of other projects. And it was a good time. And then about 2 years ago, so like I said, I was there about 26 years, the company had been through a lot of acquisitions. So when I started, it was a privately owned company. It was about 200 people. We were public, we were private, we were bought and sold. At the time I left, we were owned by a huge conglomerate we were like 60,000 employees. Not all in education, but they own a ton of stuff. And the corporate culture, for whatever reason, had turned really toxic. It was, I was saying to Dr. O'Shea that they actually collectively turned into sociopaths, and I had to. And it was not a decision I would take lightly. I had a long tenure with them. I was very respected, and I started calling up people that I knew. And the interesting thing about working in software integration is that I knew a lot of people at a lot of companies. And the amazing thing was that everyone that I called directly, they're like, yeah, we know you were interested, let's talk. I would send an email and I'd have like an email back the next day. I can't say the same for companies that I sent, just resumes out to. Those were pretty quiet. But there's definitely a moral there, and you never know when you're going to be looking for something else, and be nice to people. Because now my motto is, hey, you're always interviewing. Always be thinking about what can happen. So I started calling around. I ended up going to a company that was based in Atlanta. It was like 25 people. So I went from a company that was 60,000 to one that was 25. And this company specialized in data integration. They were like just starting out. The company was maybe 4 years old. They had a platform. So I worked for them for about 4 months, and then they were acquired. So actually last year I technically worked for 4 different companies. Even though I'm like, yeah, I worked 26 years one place. Actually last year I worked for 4 companies. They were acquired by a company in San Francisco, only slightly bigger, maybe 100 people, maybe 150 now, that specializes in analytics for schools. So analytics for K-12 looks like, is this student going to graduate? Is this student going to go to college? Is this student going to do well? Are they going to need remedial classes? Are they going to graduate college? Are they going to go on to get graduate degrees? And looking at patterns to see, as young as elementary school, trying to target whether students are on track or not and having interventions to help them out. My job is still to wrangle huge amounts of data that feeds into that. We'll often have 15 years of data, of historical data, to try and figure that out, with dozens of data points for analytics. Still don't need my notes, but I am on the next page. Always need notes. Hey, I've covered like everything. So my job, in addition to acquiring data, is that I'm a team lead. I have a team of about 10 engineers that work for me. About half of them are in India. And they this is not relevant to anything, but actually the India team, they work late in the day, their time. So they'll work like their afternoon and evening so that we have like a half day overlap. And then the rest of my team is spread around the country. And we get very good at using our digital tools available to us to pretty much always be in communication, always knowing what everyone's doing. and I spent a lot of time wrangling people, which is using some psychology there, and wrangling data. So that's all good. The company as a whole, this company out in San Francisco, they're called Bright Bites. And it is a very young company, both, yeah, like I said, maybe the company's 5 years old, maybe a little less. And the majority of the workforce is under 30. And they're very eclectic and really awesome. So there are people who are just really into research, teaching and learning styles and what predicts success. And, we partner with universities to figure out what's good and what's not good. There are people who can really get into the weeds on machine learning and how to build a model and all the math behind that. There are engineers who can talk about HTTP response codes and until you can't take it anymore. All right, that's me. But when I talk to a lot of people, or as I meet new people, I go and look at their LinkedIn profile or whatever. A lot of people do not have degrees in what they're doing. Mostly what they have is passion. I had a guy working for me for a really long time, and he was really good. He was a software engineer. He had a degree in Shakespearean literature. And seriously, nobody wanted to hire him. And I interviewed him, and I was like, and everyone was like, don't do it, don't do it. And he was great. I mean, I could tell he knew what he was doing, and he'd be good, and he grew into it. So I think what I'm saying is, a cognitive science degree is a great launching point to a lot of careers, even if they're not exactly a one-to-one alignment to cognitive science. And I think that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. And we will, like I said, have lots of time for questions after. I think we'll let our other panelists speak before we open for questions.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm overcoming a cold, so if I start coughing in the middle, that's why. So I'm, I guess, the most recent alumni here. My name is Joelle. I graduated in 2013. And I actually chose Lehigh because of the cognitive science major. When I was thinking of what I wanted to do with my life in high school, which I know is really hard to know because you're 16, 17, I found just from internet searching that cognitive science was a major at it was maybe 5 or 6 universities, and one of them was Lehigh. And it was a perfect school for me, something I thought I could get into with really good academics. So at the time, John Gatewood was the head of the department, and him and I emailed a lot, and it seemed like it was going to be a really good fit. And it really was, so I definitely recommend majoring in it. And the reason I liked it so much is because it's so varied. If you have computer science, all my professors are here, which is really cool. Psychology, neuroscience, you can easily double major or even dual degree. So that's what I did. I majored in cognitive science and also did behavioral neuroscience. But as Dr. O'Shea would tell you, I changed my major probably 5 or 6 times, which drove him crazy, I know, because he was my academic advisor. But because I was just interested in so many things, I didn't know what to do. But my sophomore year, I did research with Amit Hubach, which most of you probably know. And I stayed with her until I graduated, and I did my cognitive science thesis with her. And then when I graduated, we actually published my thesis, which was really cool. And she gave me so much responsibility. She'd have me manage her lab. We wrote a grant together, and so I could do research for her as a summer internship. So she was really great, and she kind of initiated my desire to become an independent scientist myself. But then I knew while I really enjoyed the work I was doing with Amit, that maybe a more molecular path was something I wanted to explore. So I started taking some of the pre-med requirements just in case. Medicine was also something I was interested in. And I took intro biology, and my professor, Michael Kuchka, he's not in the program, but he's in biology. He studies plant biology, which is something I don't do right now, but he was just so great and so animated, so I actually worked with him as well as Amit. So I had a very molecular research experience. I was literally working with yeast cells, like as molecular as you can get. And then with Almond, we were working with undergraduates. So it was such an interesting experience. Like I would go up to mountaintop and then come back and do my computer analysis with Almond. So it was a really cool curriculum. And then, so towards the end of Lehigh, I decided that I probably wanted to either go into science or medicine, but I wasn't quite sure what. So I decided that I should probably work in science and medicine just to try to figure that out. So I applied to a ton of different research positions and ultimately ended up at a job at Johns Hopkins. And it was kind of like a clinical neuroscience lab. It was in the Department of Neurology. Sorry, there it goes. And we worked on neuroAIDS, which I didn't even know existed, but HIV can infect the brain, so we studied that, as well as multiple sclerosis. And so I worked with human clinical samples with their blood, and I was analyzing using mass spectrometry, and I was hooked. Like I was like, I have to do science forever. It was so cool. So then I applied to PhD programs, and now I'm currently a third year in a molecular neuroscience lab at Johns Hopkins. So we're studying cortical connectivity. So it's very basic science. We're studying how a specific population of specific cortical neurons is integrated in the brain. So it's a little different from the plant biology I was doing with Dr. Kutchka and the behavioral memory research with Ahmed, but all the experiences with both of them, that's how I know how to do what I'm doing right now. And even while I was at Lehigh, I took a lot of different opportunities to do some internships as well. So one summer I worked with Ahmed, but then the next summer I worked at NIH and they have a ERDA fellowship, which if you're interested in science and medicine, I can tell you more about. It's a really cool opportunity. You actually get to go to the campus in Bethesda and work in the clinical lab and interact with all the doctors and clinicians, and so all those experiences were really great. And yeah, I think that's great.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
My name is Charles Wu, and I guess my story. Let me start my story when I was about 13 years old. My parents bought me and my brother a Commodore VIC-20. It's a personal computer, and since that time I'm hooked. I want to be an engineer. I wanted to program this thing, and so I was programming day and night on this machine. At that time, today if you want to reboot a computer, you hit Control-Delete. For that machine, to reboot it, there's a little pin in the back that you need to short. So I would use a paper clip to short that little pin in the back. And it uses cassette tape, just audio tape, cassette tape for memory. But it's not, you can't record in any spot. So to figure out where the program starters are in, I would put this cassette tape into a real audio recorder, and you would just hear the screeching on me. And then as soon as the screeching line stopped, then you go, oh, it's the end of the program. I can start recording my next program. So it's very primitive technology. So I wanted to be a computer engineer, and then I applied to Lehigh, and I went to Lehigh as an undergraduate. And I took, and I was looking to the catalog, and I saw this class, an Intro to Quantum Science that was taught by Professor Malt and Professor Melker. And when I took that class, I was blown away by the diversity of topics and then all the very interesting science. And then, there's a chapter on linguistics and AI and quantum psychology. And it just blew my mind. So after that, I said, I want to be a quantum science major. So I wound up doing a double degree in computer engineering and quantum science. And I spent, I think actually one summer working in Professor Malt's lab. I think it was doing priming images, doing image priming, and where I guess have students come in, do the experiment, and pay them some money for them to do the experiment. And recorded the result. So I really enjoy doing research from that experience, and so after I graduate, I decided to go to graduate school. I applied to several of them, and one of the schools, the professor sent me a packet of papers that he wrote. He said, "Oh, come work in my lab," and I guess he must have read my application letter and my transcript. So the research he was doing, and this is a professor in electrical engineering, the research he was doing was in neural networks, but these are neural networks that are built as a circuit, analog circuits. So in there's these neurons, but there are circuits, there are neurons, and they're connected, and there's activation function that look like a signal. So like, wait, I know this. I mean, these are neurons, and these are So I wind up accepting his offer and went to UC Berkeley for graduate school, and in fact I worked on these cellular neural networks for several years for my degree, and so that all these topics I learned in cognitive science has and so my career progresses, it turns out that all these subjects have found the relevance. So after I graduated from Berkeley, I got a job as a postdoc at IBM, and I stayed there for more than 20 years, working in their research division. So in these 20 years at IBM, I worked on many different projects, and I'll list a few of them, and I want to illustrate that in all these projects, even though at first glance they might not have much relationship to cognitive science, it turns out that they do. So one of the first projects I worked on is on improving print quality of the digital printers. At that time, IBM still makes printers, but these are large printers. These are printers that print at like 1,000 pages a minute. So the papers are basically flying through the print head. And so so it's mostly image processing and digital. And it's a electrophotographic printer. It's like a laser printer. But at the end, it's a color printer. So at the end, we have to evaluate how well these images work, and it turns out, there's a lot of kind of psychology involved in evaluating print quality. Because the way people perceive color is still it's still very abstract, and there's that theory behind how people perceive color, and there's a lot of experimenting. So there's still a lot of kind of science-related material that I need to learn to figure out how people evaluate, especially things like halftones. It's just the way people put the dots on a piece of paper, and so that when you look at it from a distance, it looks like a grayscale or a color. I mean, the arrangement of dots is still, there's still a lot of empirical evidence of what looks good and what doesn't look good. And then a lot of sometimes these are done just by people doing experiments, psychological experiments, to figure out what looks good and what doesn't look good. So that project actually, even though the technology is very mechanical and precise, the outcome, how to evaluate, is still very much related to kind of psychology. So that's one of the first projects I worked on, and in fact I worked on it for probably about 10 years. The second project I worked on was in modeling, using networks to model different phenomena. So one of the things that we use these networks to model is sort of, it's a simple model. It's a very simple model of language formation, or the model was that suppose you have certain words that you want to assign meaning to, and how do people? So this is probably too simple of a model to describe, but essentially you have a group of people. They're like leaders in a tribe or a society, and they decide who to influence, what they think the meaning of a certain sound is, and how do these sort of interaction propagate so that at the end you have one meaning for the word. And so people are studying this kind of model. We're trying to figure out whether certain strategy would improve, the sort of consensus of meaning, and so there's some of there's sort of we need to figure out what. So we actually proposed several strategies. One is sort of like a stubborn strategy where if you already pick a certain meaning of a word, it's hard for you to change your mind. And it turns out sometimes stubbornness helps depending on the structure of the network and so on. So that's one of the projects we work on. Now, after these years, recently I've moved to a different department. So now I'm actually in the Science of AI department at IBM Research. So it's sort of come full circle where I started doing more engineering and application oriented, now moving to working on AI, which is an important part of the cognitive science program. So there we work on programming on natural language processing, and so so when I work on a project, I remember well those courses I take in linguistics and context-free grammars and so on that are now finding a very important use in natural language processing. And other project I'm working on now on reinforcement learning and deep learning and so on, which contains all these ideas that I start off more than 30 years ago. So in conclusion, I think a lot of time the classes I took, I don't realize how useful they are until maybe 20, 30 years later when things that I studied turned out to be useful again. So even recently we were looking at papers that discuss Searle's Chinese room experiment and so on. So all these things that I remember from 30 years ago now, they're being discussed again, and so I think that's just a wonderful thing to see that how the education I had at Lehigh has helped me throughout all these years.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Chris Biglin, class of 1990 Lehigh. Haven't been back to Lehigh. Well, actually, I was back 4 years ago when my son was looking for schools, but that's the only visit I've had back since I graduated. So appreciate the opportunity to come back. And on personal side, proud father of 5 wonderful kids, and in prep for this meeting, because a little older, my oldest is a junior in college. I've got an 18-year-old who's on her way this coming fall. I've got another one who's in high school and a couple who are younger. So I asked them, well, what would you want to hear? And I got, surprise, conflicting advice. So I'm going to try to hit a little bit on what each of them said, and if I'm not hitting the mark, make sure you ask them better questions. So my son, the junior, said, well, they're probably already majors, and so you don't have to sell them on the program. Talk about your decision making when you are moving on. And my daughter, who's going into college, said, no.